Namaste, friends. I was away in India during December. That is why there has been a lag in making videos. Now I'm back in US. So in this first video after coming back to US, I want to cover a couple of topics that were being heavily covered by Indian media when I was in India in December. The first thing is after China moved away from the zero COVID policy, the number of cases in China skyrocketed. So there was a concern about another COVID wave across the world, and Indian media was really hyping this up. So I wanted to weigh in on this astrologically. And the other thing was there was a clash between Indian and Chinese armed forces on the border in the Arunachal Pradesh area while I was in India in December. So there was a concern in the Indian media about a potential Indo-China war coming soon, and I wanted to weigh in on that. One more thing is some astrologers are actually predicting that there will be a disastrous war for India. I think that is coming from the fact that this is 60 years from 1962 when India was humiliated by China in a war. So after 60 years, Saturn and Jupiter come back to the same signs. So some astrologers are using that to predict that this is a bad year for a bad war for India with China. So I want to weigh in on those two astrologically. And before I do that, I just wanted to wish you a happy Gregorian New Year 2023 for those who celebrate the Gregorian calendar. And some people ask me to make some predictions for 2023. I usually do it for the lunar New Year in March time frame, the spring time frame. The January 1 date has no astrological or astronomical significance, so we don't really make any predictions based on that chart. So just wait a couple of months. And as I said, these are the two topics I want to cover: the possibility of a resurgence of COVID-19 across the world, and also the possibility of an Indo-China war. And before I do that, I said that I was in India in December, so I wanted to just quickly share a few photos. I basically came to Hyderabad for a wedding in the family, and after the wedding, Swami Sadasivam, the head priest of Kalikambal temple in Chennai, and the man behind the Homa movement, and also somebody very dear to us, he took us on a pilgrimage in North India. We were in North India for a few days. First we went to Kashi, and it is a really beautiful place. And the day we went there, we reached there, happened to be at the first anniversary of, I think, Kashi Corridor or something. So there was a lot of huge celebrations and festivities. So it was really beautiful to see Kashi on that day. And we visited various places like Sankat Mochan, Hanuman Temple, Kal Bhairav Temple, Murchunjay Temple, Annapurna Vishwanath. But the temple that I really found a connection, perhaps there is a past life Rana, but the temple I found a connection with was the Gauri Kedareshwar temple and also the Kedar Ghat. I spent a lot of time meditating there and also doing a homa there in the night. It was really pleasant. One small word is, when people go on pilgrimage, they try to check off various items. They want to see so many places, and they're always rushing. What I suggest is, find a place that you have a connection with, where you feel nice or calm or where you enjoy, and spend some time meditating or doing a homa. That is a very good way to benefit from the energy at the temples. One more thing is, people are always thinking of touching the idol or being very close to the idol. It's not necessary. The energy field of places like this is more vast than you may imagine. So as long as you are in the vicinity of that energy field, just relax and meditate and do a homa. That is better than being in a rush and trying to check off various items from your checklist. So yeah, as I said, I really loved Kedar Ghat, and also I enjoyed meditating on the Manikarnika Ghat, watching the funeral pyres burn in front of me, and then meditating on the Divine Mother. It was really pleasant. There is some, when you see all that, there is some calm in that particular place, even though you may see so many funeral pyres burning. And wherever I went, either on the temple premises or outdoors, or sometimes within the room where we were staying, we just did a homa every day. And this was in the Karpatri Maharaj ashram where we stayed in Kashi. So this was a very simple homa with the least amount of materials done before we started our daily walks. Actually, just wanted to show you a quick. Like I said, we did Homa in various places, and one really pleasant and memorable Homa was in the Kedar Ghat. So, sitting at night uh, when it is really calm and watching vast water in front of you. There was Ganga in front of me, and doing a Homa is really pleasant. A vast body of water and a large fire. Both of them have a really calming influence on us. That's the temple, Gauri Kedareshwar temple. So I was basically sitting there and meditating after the Homa. This is after the Purnahuti meditation. And we went to Gaya. This is Bodh Gaya. Of course, we couldn't take pictures inside. So it's a really nice place, and it's interesting to see so many people meditating there. And we also spent a lot of time at the Vishnupad temple in Gaya. It's a really fantastic temple. If you go to Gaya, make sure that you visit the Vishnupad temple. And I usually don't put any plugins like this, any ads. I don't advertise for people, but this is somebody very close to Anna Swami Sadasivam, and he's a South Indian Purohit of excellent pedigree, and he owns a lodge right next to the Vishnupad temple. You can basically walk from this lodge to the temple. Temple is right here. So if you visit Gaya, consider staying here, and his contact information is here. And as I said, we did Homa wherever we went. One really memorable Homa was inside the Vishnupad temple. Swami Sadasivam arranged to do a Homa inside the temple under Akshay Vat. There is a huge banyan tree called Akshay Vat. So it is a really famous temple, famous tree under that, inside that Vishnupad temple. So it was really pleasant doing a simple Homa under that Akshay Vat at Vishnupad. And after that, we went to Tarapeeth. And for those who don't know who Mother Tara is, what Tarapeeth is, it is a really powerful Shaktipeeth 5 hours north of Calcutta. And the presiding Devata is Mother Tara. And the belief is that Ma Tara is actually living there in the temple. And for those who are not familiar with Tara, she is basically very similar to Kali. She is a mother form of Kali. The story is, when Shiva drank halahal, the great poison, after the Kshetrasagar Mathanam, after the milky ocean was churned, and the halahal came out and it was destroying the world, he drank it to save the world. He was in terrible discomfort and pain because of the poison in his throat. And then Mother Tara, Mother Kali took the form of Tara, a mother form, and she took Shiva and gave him her breast milk. And that breast milk gave him some relief, and he was back to normal. So it is basically that form. So it is the mother form of Kali. So we went to Tarapeeth and did a Homa at the Tarapeeth temple. It was a really pleasant Homa in the evening. And one interesting thing with doing a Homa outdoors in India is you can get some interesting visitors. So there was this nice dog. As soon as I finished the offerings to Ganapati, etc., and I was about to invoke Mother Tara, this dog came and started licking me, and the dog was there until I invoked Mother Tara and did upcharas. So it's very interesting doing homas in India. When you do in US and do indoors, you really don't find anything like this. It's only in India and outdoors. After that, we went to Kerala for sightseeing. We went to Munnar, Tekkadi, and Aleppi. So did some sightseeing with the family and had a relaxing time. And we also spent a day on a houseboat and saw a sunrise in the boat. It was really relaxing. And apart from that, while in Munnar, we also visited a Kathakali performance that actually blended Kathakali with Teyyam, Mohiniyattam, Kuchipudi, and Bharatanatyam styles of dance. It blended them. It was a fusion kind of dance performance. It was really nice to watch. And At the same venue, organized by an organization called Punarjani, we also witnessed a riveting Kalaripayattu performance. It's an ancient martial art of Kerala, and it is basically the origin of various modern martial arts of the world. So it was really, and they employ various kinds of weapons, and it requires absolute focus. So it was really riveting to see that performance. So I strongly recommend, if you go to Kerala, make sure you watch a Kathakali performance and a Kalaripayattu performance. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. So encourage those who are keeping up our tradition. Thank you. After coming back to Hyderabad, I also did a Homa at the Jatal Sadhu temple. Jatal Sadhu is also known as Gayatri Baba. He is basically the guru of Sri Aghori Vimalananda. He appears in the Aghora series books as Chote Guru Maharaj or Junior Guru Maharaj. So, and he lived for a few hundred years, and he spent the last few decades of his life in Simhachalam, and he did a Gayatri Homa every day. So he's one of the subtle inspirations behind our Homa movement. So I went to his temple and did a large scale Homa, and there were about 120 people who attended, and they were all chanting along with me. I did Homa to a lot of devatas, several devatas, and I used simple mantras that people can repeat along with me. So people enjoyed meditating, chanting mantras, and meditating by a really large fire, and it was a really pleasant experience for me as well. It was really nice. So these are some pictures from the Homa there from different angles. And after the Homa, in the Sanidhi of Sri Jatal Sadhu, Sri Ram Vishwambhar Das, I gave an interview to a TV channel called Nirvi TV. And the link can be found on my Facebook page. I think it's in the community section of my YouTube page also. I put a link to that video. So anyway, now let us make some predictions. So what is the deal with COVID-19 resurgence in China? First of all, I think China really mismanaged this. When I predicted many months back that COVID-19 is no longer a pandemic, it is an endemic going forward. At that time, basically, having a zero COVID policy was a really dumb policy, and I also mentioned it in one of my videos. I think China was really dumb to do that. If you try to suppress cold or flu in your society, because this is like cold and flu now, this is an endemic, this will not go away, you can't completely eradicate it. So if you isolate everybody, you will not have any cases of flu and cold, but once you open things up, you will see some cold and flu cases, because world is connected and there are some cases somewhere always. So there's no point in basically isolating, because at some point you have to open up, and once you open up, people have to live with it. So bottom line is, China had a really dumb policy, and now that they suddenly opened up, and perhaps because the Chinese vaccine is not as effective as Indian and American vaccines, possibly there will be some deaths in China. So we may not get accurate numbers, but I expect, astrologically based on China's lunar charts, I expect that there will be lot of deaths, lot of cases in China. But eventually, once enough people are affected by it and overcome it, because the percentage of people who die will be very small. It will be basically people with health complications, older people, etc. So after enough people are infected with the virus, basically there will be herd immunity in China. So after a few months, current time frame January February is a critical time, but by mid 2023 things will be under control in China also. And as far as India and US are concerned, I don't really see any concern. I don't see another major wave in India or US or much of the rest of the world. So I think my expectation is that this is nothing to be worried about. Of course, when World Health Organization or other organizations tell you to be careful, wear masks and take precautions. But astrologically, I don't see any danger to India, US or the rest of the world. But I do see over the next few months lot of deaths in China, huge number of deaths in China, similar to what India saw a year and a half back and what US saw in the same time frame. So China will basically is catching up now. But after that, it will just be an endemic everywhere. So it's not going away, it will be there forever. There will be newer variations coming up, just like there are newer variations of flu and cold coming up every year. There will be newer variations, but I don't expect a dangerous new variation that kills a lot of people across the world coming up in the next year. So that is my expectation as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And as for the Indo-China war, as I said, because Saturn and Jupiter are back in the signs where they were at the time of the last Indo-China war, where India was humiliated, some astrologers are predicting it. But wars don't happen just because of Saturn, Jupiter being in particular signs. And also, India of 1962 is not the same as India of 2023. So, astrologically, again, in the second portion, I will explain the rationale. But I don't really see the possibility of a major war that is problematic for India in the coming year. And definitely, I don't expect an Indo-China war. And in the long run, as I said in previous videos, the next decade is a problematic decade for the world, when there will be a build-up to a major war in the 2030 time frame. And in that war, India and China will be on opposite sides. But I don't expect in the next couple of years, in the next 2-3 years, a war breaking out between India and China. So there may be skirmishes on the border, and there may be some tensions on the border, but it will not become a full-scale war between India and China. And the other thing is, some people are also expecting a war between India and Pakistan. I don't expect that either. I expect that Pakistan will be battling a lot of internal problems, and this is a terrible time for Pakistan, as I mentioned in a previous video. And there is no reason for India to invade Pakistan. Pakistan will just implode in the coming few years. So after Pakistan becomes really weak, India may get involved in some manner to stabilize situation there, but that is a couple of years down the road. So I don't expect a war between India and Pakistan either, but definitely not a war between India and China in the coming year or two. So that is basically what I expect, and I will go through the astrological reasoning behind what I said now, and those who are not interested in that can drop off. Let us look at the Lunar New Year for China. So if you find I made a chart for Beijing for today, and go to Mundane tab and click the previous Lunar New Year. And just to re-emphasize, during all the COVID predictions, I used the same Lunar New Year. This is basically the first new moon of Dakshinayana. So basically, Sun and Moon conjunction in tropical Cancer. That is the chart I am using, which I mentioned many times in the past. So if you look at this chart of China, this new year started on June 29 until next June 29. And if you look at this Shashtamsa D6, which is the chart I used for predicting the ups and downs in COVID in India, US in the 2020 and 2021 time frame. So if you look at this chart, let us look at the dasas. In the Shashtamsa, the Taradasa from Rahu is a strong planet in Kendra. So Taradasa from Rahu will dominate. So that is what I am using here. And if you, by the way, just looking at the chart itself, Lagna is afflicted by 3rd Lord Ketu and 6th Lord Rahu. So 2 Dusthana Lords are in Lagna. So that can show some disease related problems for the country. And by the way, D6 is the chart of pandemics and ill health in the country. And the most important thing is the 6th Lord Saturn and the 8th Lord Mars are together in the 8th house. So that can show a lot of disease and deaths, etc. in the year. And if you look at the dasas, based on Taradasa from Rahu, Mars Dasa was running from November 3 till November 26, and it was, if you look at the when the cases started skyrocketing, it was around this period that the cases started skyrocketing, early November, and the cases started going up. And next period is Rahu. Rahu is the 6th Lord in Lagna, so he is also problematic for health in the country. So this is problematic. And Jupiter, there can be some relief, but still this is not a good period, because Jupiter is the 7th Lord, Maraka, and 2nd Lord Venus is with him. 2nd Lord and 7th Lord, 2 Marakas. are together in the fifth house. So this is also a problematic period, but not as bad as these periods, and particularly this period. And after that, Shani comes. He's the sixth lord in the eighth house. So March 15 to May 14 is another problematic period. But after mid-May, Mercury Dasha starts, and Mercury is the Lagna Lord. Even though he's debilitated, even though he's in the seventh house, he's the Lagna Lord. So there should be some things should be under control. So I expect that for the next few months there will be a crisis in China, and the peak may be in the March-April time. March-April time period. But after mid-May, I think things will be under control in China. And if we quickly look at the year after that, the year that starts on July 18, if you look at this chart, you will see that there are some bad things here, like the Sun Moon conjunction in the 8th house, and the 8th house is aspected by the 8th Lord. So there are some negative combinations, but the good thing is Lagna Lord is exalted in the 5th house without any blemishes. So that is why I think the crisis will not continue past mid 2023. So I think things will be back to normal, and this will be an endemic in China also, just like it is in US and India. And people will learn to live with it, and the weaker ones who will succumb to it will have already succumbed to it, and this will be like cold and flu going forward, even in China. Now let us see the possibility of something happening in India and China. First, India and US. First, let us look at US, Washington DC. Let us look at the current lunar new year. Again, June 28. It's basically the same time, but represented in the Washington time zone. That's why you see June 28 and you saw June 29 earlier. So if you look at the D6 chart, you can see that, let's see, the Lagna Lord is in Mula Trikona, and house-wise he's in the 11th house, aspecting the 5th house of Purva Punya. But the strength of Lagna Lord is always good. And Mercury, even though he's debilitated, Mercury in Lagna is not really that problematic. And Sun and Moon in the 4th house is not really problematic. 6th Lord and 5th Lord are together in the 4th house. That's a Dhimanta Yoga. So one negative thing is Saturn and Mars in the 2nd house. But again, house longitude wise, Mars is actually in the 3rd house, which is good. So, and Rahu and Ketu, who are very strong, they happen to be in the 8th house. So there are some negative combinations. But the thing is, we don't really see a wholesale indication like we saw in the case of China. And moreover, the strength of the Lagna Lord is a big blessing. So whereas in the case of China, Lagna Lord was in debility in the Markasthana. So this is a blessing. So I don't expect that US will have a major wave because of China, and that will cause another shutdown and disruption to life. I don't expect that. And if you look at the chart of India's lunar new year chart, June 29, 822. So if you look at this chart, Lagna Lord Saturn is in the 3rd house. Even though he's in debility, he is a malefic in the 3rd house. And I believe he has Nichabhanga. Yes, he has Nichabhanga. So Lagna Lord is in Nicha, but he has Nichabhanga. He is in the 3rd house with a 3rd Lord. So 2 malefics in the 3rd. So this doesn't really show suffering with pandemic, suffering with a disease, etc. And though 8th house contains Rahu Ketu, just like in US chart, this is problematic. The strength of Lagna and overall this chart is much stronger than the China chart. So I expect that the crisis is mainly for China. It is not for India and US. And if you want to look at the rest of the world, we'll just take Moon as the Lagna. And taking Moon as Lagna, Lagna Lord is in a quadrant, even though he's in debilitation. And there is a yoga between the 10th Lord, 7th Lord Jupiter, and 5th Lord Venus. And they're aspecting the 1st house. So, and Saturn and Mars, the 6th and 8th Lords, are in the 11th house, which is a good house, and aspecting the 5th house. So nothing really stands out as a major crisis engulfing the world during this year. So my expectation is that India, US and the rest of the world will not really be that affected by this surge of cases in China, and this will be a China only thing. Now let us look at the possibility of a war between India and China, a disaster for India. Let us look at the Navamsa chart for that, and we will also look at D11 Rudramsa, but let us first look at Rasi and Navamsa. Actually, for a comparison, oh, by the way, instead of using the Lunar New Year chart, I am using India's independence chart because we have accurate data and it is more reliable compared to lunar chart. I just want to clarify one thing here. For pandemic predictions, I did not use India's chart, but I used the Lunar New Year chart. So I want to give a one subtle point here. The thing is, Lunar New Year charts, Solar New Year charts, etc. are shared by the entire world, even though the Lagna may be different for different places in the world. So on the other hand, charts like independence chart or formation chart are specific to that country. So based on the history of India, the formation chart of India is carrying certain karmas that this particular land and people of that land are carrying with them. So it is basically anything that happens to India as a result of those karmas can be seen here. So any wars with China, etc. will be more clear here. On the other hand, the Lunar New Year chart, Solar New Year chart, etc. show the collective, how the collective karmas are working and how they affect you based on your geography. So things like pandemics, etc. are better seen in those charts. That is why, because they are affecting the entire world, but affecting different places slightly differently. So for that, I use those charts. But for possibility of war, etc., if there is a formation chart available, I prefer to use that. That will be more reliable. So anyway, so that's just a technicality for those who may be curious. So for comparison, let's look at the Tithi Pravesh chart. Tithi Pravesh chart of 1962, just as a reference point. Okay, so if you look at this chart, you will see that Lagna Lord is in debility in the 4th house of land and your properties, etc. But he is in debility. So being aggressive with respect to your land, in interacting with other countries, but basically there is debility. And the 8th house contains these planets. Actually, longitude wise, you see that Venus and Rahu are in the 8th house. Rahu is the Badaka Lord, Venus is 2nd and 7th Lord Maraka. So Badaka Lord and Maraka Lord in the 8th house is terrible basically. So this is a bad year for relations with other countries. And also 6th Lord of War, Mercury is in the 7th house of relationship. So basically these two, 6th Lord in 7th and 7th Lord in 8th, can show the possibility of a war during this year. So India had a war during this year, and because of the weakness of the Navamsa chart overall, this was not India's year. India basically suffered during this year. And if you look at the Rudramsa, actually let's look at Chaturthamsa, because Chaturthamsa is your properties. And if there is a war and you lose some land, that should show in the Chaturthamsa. Oh, by the way, look at the Rasi also first. In the Rasi chart, you see that Lagna Lord is in 3rd house. He is in an inimical house, and he is in Manakarkasthana. He is not well placed. The 2nd and 3rd Lord Saturn is in the 2nd house, so that's a Marka combination. And 7th Lord Mercury is in the 8th house, again a Marka combination, and 3rd Lord is also with him. So there are terrible afflictions in the Rasi chart also. And in Chaturthamsa, 8th Lord is afflicting Lagna, and 8th house contains Saturn and Ketu. Marka, 2nd and 3rd Lord Saturn, and 12th Lord of giving up Ketu. So that is why India lost some territory in this war. This was a disastrous war for India. And finally, looking at Rudramsa, the chart of wars and clashes with other countries, you see that 8th Lord Jupiter is debilitated in the 6th house with Ketu. So this Guru Chandal Yoga on the 6th house axis of war is what basically caused a war. And Lagna Lord's Sun is afflicted by Saturn, 6th and 7th Lord. So basically this is a very problematic chart. So this is basically a comparison. Now let us look at current year. Oops, not here 2022 August. So if we look at that chart, you can see that in Rudramsa chart, Rahu is in the 6th house. So compared to Guru Chandal Yoga, in the debilitated Guru in the 6th house, This can show basically belligerent posturing with respect to other countries, and it does not really show disastrous loss. And moreover, Lagna is not uh, weak, and Lagna Lord is exalted in the ninth house. So Lagna and Lagna Lord are pretty strong, so it doesn't show and also 6th and 8th are not particularly showing a war during this year. So I don't expect a war, and even if there is a clash with some country, it will be advantageous to India. India will not suffer like in 1962. And if you look at D4, losing property, you see that the 4th Lord Mars is aspecting the 4th house. Lagna contains the 9th Lord Mercury, so nothing really shows losing your land. This is not really a bad year that way. And if you finally look at the Navamsha, relations with other countries, you see that the Lagna Lord is exalted in the 9th house. So this is actually a great year for India for diplomacy. Lagna Lord in the 9th shows excellent diplomacy with other countries, and affliction by Mars and Sun, the fairy planet, shows some kind of aggressive diplomacy that will aggressive and patient diplomacy that will work very well. So the and also 9th Lord and Yokarka Venus is exalted in the 2nd house. So overall, this is a very strong chart. So this is a year when India's stature in the world keeps increasing. This is not a year of setbacks and wars, etc. The 6th Lord Moon is in an inimical sign, but house-wise he is in the 2nd house. So 6th Lord in the 2nd is not particularly indicative of any war or anything. So and also 8th Lord Mercury is in the 12th house. That's a Viparita Rajoga. It doesn't really show war. So there aren't any serious combinations suggesting a war in India's annual chart. So I don't really think that there is a war. India is staring at a war. And I mentioned that Pakistan is in crisis and it will continue to be crisis. I mentioned in a previous video and also in this video. I will try to make a dedicated video on Pakistan because the next few years for Pakistan are extremely delicate. So I'll try to make a separate video, so I'll skip it here. So I think that's all I wanted to show here today. And thank you very much. And I hope that my predictions come true. But take your precautions. In case there is a surge in COVID in your area, please wear a mask and take whatever precautions are meaningful to you. Thank you very much. Om Tat Sat Sarvam Sri Krishnarpanamastu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu Yavad Bhumandale Sanatan Dharmo Vardhatu Visheshtah Bhartakande America Avashte Tibet Rashte Cha Om शांति शांति शांति